Right now, just sitting on your bathroom counter, there might actually be a chemical compound that is powerful enough to act as a clinical grade drug.
Oh, easily. Yeah.
But it's hiding, behind the label of a simple anti-aging serum or like a revitalizing cream. And it's doing that just to avoid the grueling gauntlet of medical regulation.
Right. Because that regulation is intense.
Exactly. I mean,
Yeah.
we are surrounded by incredibly scientific-sounding buzzwords in the beauty aisle.
Yeah.
But if you actually dig into the proof behind claims like quantum hydration matrices or whatever, you usually find a whole lot of nothing.
Well, yeah, it's mostly just marketing fluff.
Right. But today, in this deep dive, we are looking at a document that completely shatters that illusion. We are decoding what is essentially a declaration of scientific independence.
Yeah, and the document in question was published in August of 2026 on the Zenodo repository. It's really this fascinating pivot in how we classify chemical compounds.
Right.
It outlines the developmental reclassification and, well, what they call the strategic elevation of something called the SH-1 molecule.
And we really have to pause just to appreciate the origin of this publication. Because the affiliations alone signal that we are not dealing with a standard corporate press release here.
Not at all.
No. We have Dr. Melvin Sewell from the Department of Theoretical Biochemistry at the Cosmic University of Echo Rift Studies 9X.
Which is a mouthful.
It really is. And he's alongside Saiku Venga from the Bye magazine research directorate, specifically from their TrueFlow Universe archives.
Right.
So we are going to explore how this SH-1 molecule is aggressively firing itself from the highly lucrative cosmetics industry to become a serious preclinical investigational drug.
So, okay, let's unpack this. To understand what SH-1 is becoming, we first have to understand the environment it is actively fleeing.
Yeah, that's crucial. So the publication officially withdraws SH-1 from all cosmetic active framing. Moving forward, the authors declare it will no longer be described, marketed, or, framed as a surface active at all.
Wow, they're just totally walking away. Exactly, and they clarify this isn't a reactive measure. I mean, they aren't pulling it because of adverse safety findings. Nobody got a chemical burn.
Right. It wasn't a recall.
Exactly, not a recall. It is a proactive elevation of the molecule's scientific identity. And that's really driven by the fact that the cosmetic environment demands almost zero empirical validation for its underlying mechanisms.
Basically, they are calling out the cosmetic industry as a domain where unvalidated ingredients run wild, like the Wild West.
Oh, it completely is the Wild West.
You can just ride into the market and make a bunch of flashy claims about follicular revitalization or whatever.
Right.
And as long as your serum doesn't actively burn anyone's skin off, you don't really have to prove that it structurally does what you say it does.
Yeah, the regulatory threshold for mechanism validation in cosmetics is virtually non-existent when you compare it to pharmaceuticals.
Right.
And the document highlights this by pointing directly at another cosmetic active known as JXL069.
Oh, yeah, they really went after that one.
Oh, they did. They used JXL069 as the poster child for this whole speculative tier of ingredients. It's aggressively marketed, but the authors note it remains totally mechanistically unverified.
Meaning there's no actual data behind it.
Right. There's no receptor-level evidence, there's no metabolic data, no binding affinity models. It exists purely as a surface-level promotional narrative.
Okay, but if I'm the team behind SH-1 and I'm looking at the sheer profit margins of the cosmetic industry, I have to ask why leave?
Right.
I mean, if being a cosmetic is a multi-billion-dollar enterprise
Right.
and requires so little proof, why voluntarily choose the vastly more expensive, heavily regulated path of clinical legitimacy? Are they just being scientifically stubborn? Or is there, like, a tangible benefit to abandoning all that easy money?
Well, this raises an important question about true scientific identity. The motivation lies in preserving the actual structural rigor of their discovery.
Okay.
Because if SH-1 remained in the cosmetic category, the broader scientific community would inevitably just lump it in with compounds like JXL069.
Oh, I see. Guilt by association.
Exactly. It wouldn't matter how sophisticated the underlying biochemistry of SH-1 actually was. The sheer lack of a regulatory mandate to prove its efficacy would trap it in that speculative tier.
Right. So by staying in an unregulated space, they would essentially be undermining the very real, very potent structural identity of their own molecule.
Yes. They had to leave to be taken seriously.
Which means we really need to look at the biology they're trying to protect here. Because the scientific architecture of the SH-1 molecule is intense.
It really is.
The document defines it by its, quote, tetracyclic androgen receptor antagonist scaffold.
Right.
It features competitive displacement geometry, and it operates on follicular microenvironment logic. That is a lot of big words.
It is a lot of jargon. So let's look at the tetracyclic androgen receptor antagonist scaffold first.
Please do.
So we know that androgen receptors drive massive changes in cellular behavior when hormones bind to them.
Like hair growth or hair loss, things like that.
Exactly. And an antagonist's job is to block that interaction. SH-1 is built with a highly rigid four-ringed structure. That's the tetracyclic part.
Yeah.
And it's designed specifically to interfere with that binding process.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
Because the document emphasizes its competitive displacement specifically against DHT.
Yes.
And we know DHT is a highly potent androgen. It is notorious for its high binding affinity to receptors in hair follicles and skin.
Mm-hmm.
So how does a tetracyclic scaffold actually outcompete something as chemically aggressive as DHT?
You have to look at the geometry. It's not just about bumping into the receptor, It's about spatial occupation.
Okay.
Imagine the androgen receptor as a highly complex lock, and DHT is the key that normally turns it.
Right, makes sense.
SH1 doesn't just block the keyhole. Its competitive displacement geometry means it slides into the lock and acts like a key broken off inside the cylinder.
Oh, wow. So nobody else can even get in.
Precisely. The tetracyclic scaffold provides this bulky, rigid structure that anchors itself deep into the binding pocket. And once it's there, its spatial footprint is so precise and so encompassing that DHT physically cannot access the docking site at all.
Okay, so it's basically a geometric blockade, like a molecular game of musical chairs, and SH-1 just took the only seat.
That's a great way to put it, yeah.
But let me push back on this a little bit. Even if it's a brilliant geometric blockade, why couldn't they just sell that as an ultra-premium hair or skin cosmetic? I mean, why does the sheer fact that it is a tetracyclic scaffold mandate a full clinical investigational pathway?
Because true extracellular modulation, which is actively regulating a follicular microenvironment by physically displacing powerful hormones at the receptor level, that is inherently a pharmacological intervention.
Oh, so it's crossing a line from cosmetic to actual drug.
Exactly. If you claim a geometric docking narrative, you are making a claim about actively altering biological pathways. You cannot just state that on a shiny bottle without clinical-grade proof.
Right. The FDA would have a field day with that.
Oh, totally. If they kept this in cosmetics, the geometric docking narrative would just be dismissed as marketing fluff. So to legitimize the claim that you are displacing DHT, you need an investigational framework that absolutely proves receptor-level activity.
Right. But claiming a molecule has perfect competitive geometry in, like, a computer model means nothing if it degrades the second it touches human skin. So how do they actually prove this geometric blockade survives in the physical world?
Well, that requires abandoning the safety net of cosmetic testing entirely. The publication transitions SH-1 into a preclinical investigational molecule, which establishes a completely grueling pipeline of empirical evaluation milestones.
Okay, let's walk through this pipeline, because it's intense. Starting with their mechanistic assays. They're specifically running AR binding curves and selectivity indices. I'm assuming this is to prove that the broken key analogy actually holds up in a real biological lock and not just on a whiteboard.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And the selectivity index is paramount here. I mean, it's one thing to bind to an androgen receptor, but it's another to only bind to the targeted androgen receptors.
Right. You want to go rogue.
Exactly. The AR binding curves provide quantitative data on how tightly SH-1 grips the receptor compared to DHT. But the selectivity index proves that this really bulky tetracyclic scaffold isn't accidentally docking into, say, estrogen receptors or glucocorticoid receptors.
Because if it did that...
it would trigger massive, unintended hormonal cascades across the body.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that would be a disaster. And because they are actively blocking these receptors, they have to prove the surrounding tissue doesn't just totally freak out. Which brings us to their microenvironmental studies, where they track inflammatory surface metrics and receptor surface interactions.
Right, think about it. If you jam a rigid foreign structure into a cellular receptor, the cell might recognize it as an invader and initiate an immune response.
Like getting a splinter.
Basically, yeah. So tracking inflammatory metrics means they are rigorously measuring the release of cytokines and interleukins in that immediate microenvironment. They have to prove that while SH-1 is busy blocking DHT, it isn't simultaneously signaling the local tissue to launch a massive inflammatory cascade.
Which leads right into the pharmacokinetic profiling.
Yeah.
Which honestly seems like the most daunting hurdle to me. They are measuring dermal retention, diffusion modeling, and the stability of the tetracyclic structure itself.
It is daunting. The physical bulk of a tetracyclic scaffold makes pharmacokinetics incredibly difficult. I mean, the skin's primary function is to keep foreign molecules out.
Right, it's a barrier.
Exactly. So to be effective, SH1 has to penetrate the stratum corneum, which is the outermost layer of the skin, but it cannot penetrate too deeply.
So what does this all mean for the molecule? It feels a bit like an amateur musician leaving an open mic night, which would be the cosmetics world, to endure a grueling multi-day audition for Gilead, which is these preclinical trials.
That's a really good analogy.
Because when they talk about dermal retention, the stakes are incredibly high. If SH1 just sits on the dead skin cells on the surface, it never reaches the androgen receptors in the follicles, so it's completely useless. But if it diffuses too easily, it bypasses the follicular microenvironment altogether and slips right into the bloodstream.
And systemic absorption of an androgen receptor antagonist is a pharmacological nightmare.
Really? Why is that?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, if SH1 enters the bloodstream, it starts blocking DHT throughout the entire body, not just at the target site. That leads to widespread systemic hormone disruption.
Oh, so it wouldn't just be localized to the skin or hair. It would affect everything.
Exactly. That is why diffusion modeling is so incredibly critical. They have to map the exact trajectory of the molecule to ensure it reaches the follicular depth and then simply stays there.
It has to park itself perfectly. That perfectly explains why their final milestone is safety and tolerability, specifically focusing on metabolic neutrality. They have to prove that even if trace amounts of SH1 do accidentally hit the bloodstream, the body's natural metabolic pathways can clear it without causing systemic toxicity.
Yeah. And consider the alternative in the cosmetic world.
Right.
A cosmetic brand might test for basic topical sensitization, which is literally just applying the cream to a patch of skin to see if it causes a rash.
Right, the classic patch test.
Exactly. They were definitely not mapping the diffusion coefficients of the active ingredients, nor are they running complex assays to verify metabolic neutrality in the liver.
No, absolutely not.
So this investigational roadmap is really about building a bulletproof foundation of empirical data. It draws a permanent line in the sand between a highly assayed molecule like SH1 and purely promotional ingredients like JXL069.
Yeah, it's an exhausting physical gauntlet. I mean, we were talking about years of lab works, tweaking formulations, measuring interleukin levels, and just constantly battling the physical limitations of a bulky molecule trying to navigate human tissue.
It takes a very long time.
But while SH1 goes through this messy, trial-and-error physical reality, the document introduces a fascinating concept about where the core identity of the molecule actually lives.
Right, the theoretical continuity.
Yes.
The authors maintain that while SH1 is stripped of its cosmetic active framing, its true structural identity is preserved entirely within what they call the SMI theoretical framework.
Right. SMI stands for Structured Multiversal Interactions. And the document claims the molecule's computational architecture is securely held in the SH1 reality kernel model. Now, I have to push back here, because when you combine terms like structured multiversal interactions with Dr. Sewell's affiliation at the Cosmic University of Echo Rift Studies NIACS, it sounds like we've completely left biochemistry behind and entered like theoretical quantum physics. What does multiversal actually mean in the context of developing a pharmaceutical drug?
Well, what's fascinating here is that it refers to computational phase space simulations.
Okay, break that down for me.
So modern theoretical biochemistry doesn't just look at a molecule in a single static environment anymore. Through advanced computational modeling, researchers can simulate a molecule's behavior across literally millions of theoretical permutations.
Wow, millions.
Yes, varying pH levels, temperature fluctuations, lipid barrier densities, receptor mutations. They are effectively running the molecule through a computational multiverse of highly specific biological environments.
Oh, I get it now. So the reality kernel is basically the distilled mathematical truth of the molecule, extracted from all those thousands or millions of simulations.
Precisely. And it's the exact opposite of the messy physical lab work.
Right.
In a physical preclinical trial, a specific topical formulation of SH1 might fail. Maybe the solvent they used degraded the tetracyclic scaffold before it could even penetrate the skin.
Sure, human error or just bad formulation.
Right. In the old days, a failed trial like that might cast doubt on the entire compound. People would think the molecule itself didn't work. But the SMI theoretical framework abstracts the pure mathematical logic of SH1 completely away from the physical substrate.
So it basically creates a firewall between the physical chemical in the lab and the mathematical concept on the computer.
Exactly. The reality kernel acts as an invariant proof of efficacy. It holds the pristine, mathematically verified reality of the tetracyclic scaffold and that competitive displacement geometry we talked about.
So it's like a perfect blueprint.
Yes. If a physical formulation fails in the lab, they don't abandon the molecule. They consult the reality kernel, identify where the physical application deviated from the pure computational logic, and they just adjust the physical solvent. The pure structural identity of SH-1 remains completely untouched by physical trial and error.
That honestly reframes the entire process. The messy, physical preclinical roadmap is really just the arduous process of forcing the physical world to match the perfection that's already locked inside the reality kernel.
That's a beautiful way to phrase it, yeah.
This document isn't just about changing how a chemical is labeled.
Yeah.
It's a masterclass in how modern science protects a theoretical breakthrough while aggressively dragging it into physical legitimacy.
It demands that we rethink how we assign value to the compounds we interact with on a daily basis. The authors are establishing a precedent where theoretical rigor dictates classification, regardless of how a compound was originally commercialized.
And they leave absolutely no room for misinterpretation. To close out this deep dive, I really want to reiterate the intense declaration the authors make at the very end of their publication. They state plainly, SH1 is not JXL069.
Right.
It is not a cosmetic active. It is an investigational AR antagonist molecule on a formal pathway toward clinical legitimacy. Its developmental identity has been elevated.
It's a bold statement, and it leaves you with something to really think about. If a molecule can be reclassified and elevated entirely based on its underlying structural rigor fleeing the cosmetic aisle to endure the grueling gauntlet of clinical labs, how many everyday compounds sitting on our bathroom counters right now possess hidden, highly potent clinical mechanisms?
That's a wild thought.
It is. Mechanisms that have been deliberately ignored or downplayed just to avoid that exact medical regulation.